My daughter asked me for $2,000 the same day I said goodbye to my husband forever. 37 years of marriage ended with me sitting alone at the memorial service, her seat conspicuously empty beside me. David fought his illness for 18 exhausting months. I barely slept. Counted endless medications, held him through difficult nights, changed linens, whispered hopeful promises, watched him grow weaker. Melissa couldn't be bothered to show up. "Mum, it's Brad's annual Super Bowl party," she'd said flatly when I called begging her to reconsider. "Everyone important will be there. Dad would understand." He wouldn't. Neither could I. I was still in mourning when her message lit up my phone. "Hey, could you transfer $2,000? Credit cards maxed out again. Thanks." No condolences, no apology, just demands, like always. That text changed something in me, broke through decades of denial, cleared my vision after years of making excuses. I finally saw my daughter for who she truly was. Looking back, I should have seen this coming. The signs were there all along, bright red flags I painted over with maternal excuses. She's just going through a phase. She's finding herself. She'll grow out of it. 32 years of phases. 32 years of waiting for my daughter to become someone who cared about anyone besides herself. I met David when we were both 19, working summer jobs at the local diner. He had kind eyes and a quiet laugh that made me feel safe. We married at 22, both still in college. I worked 2 jobs so he could finish his engineering degree, then he did the same for me. We were a team. Melissa was born when I was 25. From the moment the doctor placed her in my arms, my life revolved around her. David and I both agreed. Our child would have everything we didn't: stability, opportunity, love without condition. I returned to work 6 weeks after she was born, pumping milk in bathroom stalls between client meetings. David took night shifts, so one of us was always home with her. We bought a modest house in a good school district instead of the downtown apartment we really wanted. Every decision, every single one, we made with Melissa in mind. Her first word was more. Looking back, that seems fitting. At 8, she demanded riding lessons after seeing a horse in a movie. Despite our tight budget, I picked up weekend bookkeeping jobs to pay for them. She quit after 3 months, bored. At 12, it was an expensive cello that collected dust in her room. At 16, a car nicer than anything David or I had ever driven. College was a 5-year tour through 3 different universities, each switch requiring new apartments, new furniture, new everything. "Mum, everyone gets help from their parents," she'd say, rolling her eyes whenever I mentioned money. "Do you want me to be the only one struggling?" And the thing is, I didn't. I wanted her life to be easier than mine had been. David felt the same way. We both grew up with so little him with an alcoholic father who disappeared for days, me with a single mother working around the clock. We thought giving Melissa everything meant giving her a better start. Instead, it just gave her expectations. When she moved back home after college, just until I find my footing, David and I converted our home office into her bedroom again. 6 months turned into 2 years. No rent, no chores, just endless complaints about our outdated kitchen and how embarrassing it was to bring friends over. Even when she finally moved out at 27, the financial drain continued. Security deposits we paid, furniture we bought, credit card debts we cleared twice. Always with promises to pay us back. Always forgotten. "It's what parents do," David would say when I expressed concern, and I'd nod, pushing down my doubts. Because that's what we believed. That's what we were taught. Sacrifice everything for your children. When David got sick, Melissa visited exactly 3 times in 18 months. Once, when he was diagnosed, she stayed for dinner and left before the dishes were done. Once on Christmas for less than an hour before rushing off to a party. And once about 2 months before the end, when she needed a co-signer for a new car lease. During those final terrible weeks, I called her daily with updates. Most went straight to voicemail. For those she answered, I could hear background noises, bars, parties, friends laughing as she hurried me off the phone. "I can't handle the negativity right now, Mom," she told me when I broke down during one call. "I'm trying to practice self-care." The day David died, I left 7 messages before she called back. "I'm really sorry, Mom," she said. And for a moment, I felt relief that my daughter was there for me. Then she continued, "But I've had these Super Bowl plans forever. Brad only hosts once a year and everyone who matters will be there. Can't we do the funeral Monday?" I explained, voice shaking, that everything was arranged, that people were coming from out of town, that the funeral home had limited availability, that her father deserved respect. "Dad would want me to live my life," she said firmly. "He wouldn't want me to miss out." After that devastating text asking for money the day of the funeral, I sat in David's chair for hours, clutching my phone. The house felt hollow without him. My chest ached with a physical pain I couldn't soothe. Around midnight, I texted back one word: no. It was possibly the first time I'd ever denied her anything significant. My finger trembled as I hit send, decades of parenting instincts screaming at me to take it back, to fix it, to make it better for her. Her response came almost immediately. "Seriously? I'm having a crisis here. I thought you'd want to help." And just like that, something crystallized within me, something hard and clear and long overdue. 3 days of silence followed my no. 3 blessed, peaceful days where I started to breathe again. I sat with my grief, without Melissa's demands draining me further. I sorted through David's clothes, holding each shirt to my face, searching for his scent. I read the sympathy cards people had sent, touched by how many lives he'd impacted. For the first time in decades, I put myself first. Then my doorbell rang Thursday evening. Melissa stood on my porch, mascara perfect, blonde hair freshly highlighted, wearing a coat I recognized from a designer website that had made me wince at the price. Her expression wasn't grief or remorse, it was annoyance. "Mom, what's going on? You haven't been answering my texts." I hadn't seen any texts. I checked my phone later and found 3 all variations of hey, with no mention of her father or my well-being. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. She breezed past me, her expensive perfume momentarily overwhelming the scent of the casseroles well-meaning neighbors had been dropping off. She glanced at the living room, where sympathy flowers still filled every surface, and quickly looked away. "So, about that money," she started, not even sitting down. "I really need it by tomorrow. The credit card company is threatening to call collections." I stared at her, this stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Your father just died." She sighed dramatically. "I know, Mom, and it's awful. But life goes on, right? That's what Dad always said." The casual invocation of David's name, using him to manipulate me when she couldn't even attend his funeral, broke something loose inside me. "No," I said again, finding the word easier this time. She blinked, genuinely shocked. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no, Melissa, I'm not giving you $2,000. Her face hardened. "Is this because I missed the funeral? I told you I couldn't get out of Brad's party. Everyone important was there." "More important than your father?" I asked quietly. "God, Mom, don't be so dramatic. Dad wouldn't want all this moping around. He'd want us to celebrate his life by living ours." The audacity took my breath away. "And how exactly does maxing out another credit card celebrate his life?" Her eyes narrowed. "Wow, nice. Real nice, Mom." She pulled out her phone, thumbs flying across the screen. "Just so you know, I'm telling everyone how you're treating me right now. Holding money over my head when I'm grieving. Grieving at a Super Bowl party?" The words came out before I could stop them. Her head snapped up. "I process trauma differently than you do, okay? Not everyone needs to wear black and cry for attention. I felt like I'd been slapped. Attention? Come on, Mom. The daily calls during Dad's treatment, the constant updates to everyone, the big funeral. Some of that was for show, and we both know it. My legs nearly gave out. I sank onto the sofa, ears ringing. This person, my child, thought I had orchestrated some performance out of my husband's suffering, out of the worst pain I'd ever experienced. You need to leave, I whispered. Not until you transfer the money. She crossed her arms. I drove all the way here. All the way was 20 minutes. 20 minutes she couldn't spare for her father's funeral but could manage when she wanted cash. I said, no, Melissa, and I need you to go. Fine. She snatched her purse. But just remember, I'm the only family you have left now. Do you really want to push me away too? The threat hung in the air between us. That was her power move, the one that always worked. The fear of being alone, of losing my only child, of having no one. But as I looked at her, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I was already alone with her in my life. Her presence didn't fill the emptiness, it expanded it. If being family means paying your debts and accepting your disrespect, then maybe we need a break from being family, I said softly. She stared at me for a long moment. You don't mean that. I do. You'll regret this, she snapped, yanking open the front door. When you're old and have no one to take care of you, you'll remember this moment. The door slammed behind her so hard that one of the sympathy cards fell from the mantel. I didn't cry. I felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of me, but underneath that emptiness was a strange sensation I couldn't immediately identify. It wasn't until I was lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, that I recognized it. Relief. My phone pinged with a notification. Melissa had tagged me in a social media post. Some people show their true colors when you're at your lowest. My father just died and my own mother refuses to help me with a temporary financial situation. Toxic parents, narcissistic mother. The comments were already flowing in, people expressing outrage on her behalf, her curated version of reality, her victimhood narrative. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes. For the first time since David's diagnosis, I slept through the night. Morning came with 37 text messages from people I barely knew. Friends of Melissa's, former neighbours, distant relatives who hadn't bothered to attend David's funeral, all demanding to know how I could be so cruel to my grieving daughter. I deleted them all unread after the first few. Then I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and did something I'd been putting off. I opened our financial records. David had always handled our finances. Not because I couldn't, I have an accounting degree, but because he enjoyed it. Spreadsheets calmed him. Numbers made sense in a way people didn't. I trusted him completely. What I found made my coffee go cold in my hands. Our retirement accounts were half what they should have been. Our savings depleted. A second mortgage I knew nothing about. And dozens of transfers to Melissa over the years, labelled vaguely as Mel emergency or helping Mel. The most recent was 2 weeks before he died. $10,000, when he could barely sit up in bed. My hands shook as I called our financial advisor. Jim, I need to understand what's happening with our accounts. There was a long pause before he answered. Ellen, David made me promise not to worry you while he was sick. He's gone now, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. I need to know. The story emerged in pieces. How Melissa had approached her father privately, repeatedly, with tales of crises that needed immediate resolution. Evictions threatened, car repossessions looming. Medical bills for issues she'd never mentioned to me. Each emergency requiring thousands, always with the promise it was the last time. He knew, Jim said gently. These past few months, he knew he was enabling her. We had several conversations about cutting her off, setting up a trust with conditions instead. But he was worried about how she'd take it, especially with his time running short. My husband had died, worried about our daughter's reaction to financial boundaries. He'd carried that burden alone, protecting me from the knowledge even as cancer ate him alive. I thanked Jim, hung up, and then did something I never thought I would. I called Melissa's ex-husband Marcus. They'd divorced 3 years earlier after just 18 months of marriage. David and I had paid for the elaborate wedding-releasing doves, champagne fountain, the works. Melissa had blamed Marcus for everything when they split. He was controlling, unreasonable, bad with money. We'd supported her, of course. I'd even testified in court about what a difficult son-in-law he'd been. Ellen? His voice was wary when he answered. I'm so sorry about David. Thank you, I said, then pushed forward before I lost my nerve. I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Why did you and Melissa really break up? The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Why now? He finally asked. Because I'm starting to think I've been lied to my entire life. Another pause. Then, we broke up because I found out she'd taken out credit cards in my name, maxed them out, ruined my credit. When I confronted her, she threatened to tell everyone I'd been abusive if I reported her for fraud. My free hand gripped the kitchen counter for support. Did she? Tell people I was abusive? Oh yeah, your testimony in the divorce proceedings was particularly effective. Shame burned through me. I'd been her unwitting accomplice, her character witness, her ATM. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know. No one ever does with Melissa. She's convincing. His voice softened. Look, I've moved on. I'm remarried, have a baby on the way. I'm just sorry you're only finding this out now. After we hung up, I sat in David's office for hours, piecing together the truth from bank statements and credit card bills. The narrative that emerged was devastating. Our retirement, decimated. Our home equity, nearly gone. David had been juggling accounts for years, trying to save for our future while simultaneously funding Melissa's fabricated emergencies. And I'd been blind to all of it. My phone pinged again. Melissa had updated her post. Update, still nothing from my mother. Grief shows people's true character. Thinking of starting a GoFundMe, since I can't even afford therapy to process losing my father. Abandoned children. Something cold and clear crystallized inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about truth. About David's legacy. About the years of manipulation I'd not only endured but enabled. I picked up my phone and did something Melissa would never expect. I replied publicly to her post. Let's talk about character, Melissa. And let's start with what you were really doing instead of attending your father's funeral. My finger hovered over the post button. 20 years of protecting her, covering for her, making excuses for her. 20 years of being her victim. I pressed post and felt the first stirrings of something I hadn't experienced in decades. Freedom. My post was like dropping a match into gasoline. Within hours, it had hundreds of comments and shares. People I hadn't heard from in years emerged from the woodwork, armed with their own stories about Melissa. She borrowed $500 for emergency dental work 3 months ago and blocked me when I asked about repayment, wrote her former roommate. She told everyone I cheated on her when really she was stealing from my wallet, commented an ex-boyfriend from college. She convinced me to invest $5,000 in a startup that never existed, added a former colleague. The stories poured in, each one a piece of a puzzle I should have solved years ago. My daughter wasn't just entitled or spoiled. She was something else entirely. Something with a clinical name I wasn't ready to research yet. Melissa called 17 times that day. I let each call go to voicemail. Her messages evolved from outrage, how dare you humiliate me publicly, to threats, I'll tell everyone you're having a mental breakdown, to sudden tearful vulnerability. Mom, I need help. I'm really struggling. That last tactic had always worked before. The damsel in distress, the wounded child. But something had shifted fundamentally inside me. I saw the manipulation for what it was now, a performance designed to extract what she wanted. That evening, my doorbell rang again. This time it wasn't Melissa, but her friend Amber, someone I'd always thought of as a good influence. Mrs. Harmon, I'm so sorry to bother you, she said, looking genuinely uncomfortable on my doorstep. I saw your post, and I felt like I needed to tell you something. I invited her in, offered her tea, and listened as another piece of the puzzle fell into place. The Super Bowl party, Amber said, staring into her mug. Melissa wasn't there. Brad didn't even have a party this year. His mom died in December, and he's still really broken up about it. The room seemed to tilt. Then where was she? Amber shifted uncomfortably. Vegas. With some guy she met on a dating app for, wealthy older men. He flew her out on a private jet the Friday before the funeral. My tea went cold in my hands as Amber continued, explaining that Melissa had been bragging about her arrangement with this man for weeks. How she'd posted photos of the casino, the luxury suite, the expensive gifts, then deleted them all after realizing people who knew about her father might see them. I thought you knew, Amber finished lamely. I'm only here because what she did was so awful, and now she's making you out to be the villain. It's not right. After Amber left, I sat in the growing darkness of my living room, processing this new information. My daughter had skipped her father's funeral not for friends, but for a sugar daddy weekend in Las Vegas. The magnitude of the disrespect made me physically ill. That night, I made 3 decisions. First, I called a locksmith to change all the locks on my house. When he asked about spare keys, I hesitated only briefly before saying, "No spares necessary." Second, I contacted an estate attorney. If David and I had been enabling Melissa financially for decades, I needed to understand exactly where we stood and how to protect what little remained. Third, I did something I'd never done before. I blocked Melissa's number. The constant ping of her messages was keeping me trapped in her drama, exactly as she wanted. Without the interruptions, I could think clearly for the first time in years. The attorney Janet Wilcox arrived the next morning. She was brisk, efficient, and refreshingly blunt. Based on what you've shown me, your financial situation is concerning, but not hopeless, she said, reviewing the documents I'd gathered. Your husband made some questionable decisions out of love for your daughter, but we can stabilize things. And Melissa, I asked, legally, do I owe her anything? Janet looked at me over her reading glasses. You're under no legal obligation to support an adult child. Morally, that's a personal decision. But from what you've told me, continuing to fund her lifestyle would be like giving matches to a pyromaniac. I nodded, relieved to hear someone say what I'd been thinking. There's something else, Janet said, her tone softening slightly. These kinds of entitlement patterns don't develop overnight. If you're serious about changing your relationship with your daughter, you need to be prepared for escalation before improvement. People don't give up their meal tickets without a fight. What are you saying? I'm saying brace yourself. Based on my experience with similar situations, things are likely to get worse before they get better. Much worse. As if summoned by her warning, my doorbell rang again. Through the window, I could see Melissa's car in my driveway, and beside it a police cruiser. Janet's eyes widened. Stay calm, she advised, gathering her papers. Don't volunteer any information. Let me do the talking. My heart hammered as I opened the door. Melissa stood there, arms crossed, next to a young officer who looked barely old enough to drink. Ma'am, I'm Officer Daniels, he said, glancing uncomfortably between Melissa and me. Your daughter has expressed concerns about your well-being. She says you've been acting erratically since your husband's passing and may be a danger to yourself. Before I could respond, Janet appeared at my shoulder. I'm Janet Wilcox, Mrs. Harmon's attorney. May I ask what specific evidence you have of any danger? The officer shifted his weight. Ms. Harmon says her mother hasn't been answering calls, has made concerning social media posts, and is giving away family property. Melissa nodded vigorously. She's not herself, officer. My father just died, and she's having some kind of breakdown. I'm worried she'll hurt herself. The calculated concern in her voice made my stomach turn. I'd heard this tone before whenever she wanted something badly enough to play the perfect daughter. Janet smiled thinly. Officer Daniels, I've been meeting with Mrs. Harmon about her late husband's estate. As you can see, she's perfectly fine and under no distress except that caused by this unnecessary visit. She blocked my number, Melissa interjected. My own mother right after Dad died. Mrs. Harmon has every right to determine whom she communicates with, Janet replied coolly. Unless you have an actual welfare concern based on evidence rather than retaliation for being cut off financially, I suggest you leave. The officer looked increasingly uncomfortable. Mum, is everything okay with you? Are you feeling unsafe in any way? I found my voice. I'm fine, officer. My daughter and I are having a disagreement about money, not my mental health. She's upset because I've stopped supporting her financially. That's a lie, Melissa's face contorted. Mom's giving away Dad's money to strangers. She's not thinking clearly. Janet raised an eyebrow. And what money would that be exactly? The money your father spent decades supporting you with. The retirement funds that are now depleted because of your emergencies? Officer Daniels held up his hands. This sounds like a family matter, not a police one. Ms. Harmon, unless you have actual evidence, your mother is in danger. There's nothing more I can do here. Melissa's mask slipped. Fine, whatever. Thanks for nothing. She turned to me, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. This isn't over. You think you can embarrass me online and get away with it? You have no idea what I'm capable of. After they left, Janet placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. That went exactly as I expected. But be careful. When manipulation fails, people like your daughter often escalate. She was right. By evening, Melissa had launched a full offensive. New social media posts claimed I was selling family heirlooms to strange men I'd met online. She'd contacted every relative in our extended family with stories about my concerning behavior. She even emailed David's former colleagues suggesting I was dishonoring his memory through erratic decisions. The worst came at midnight, a series of texts from unknown numbers. Screenshots of conversations supposedly between David and Melissa, showing him complaining about me, saying he'd wanted to leave me for years. I knew they were fake. David and I had our problems like any couple, but we'd face them together. The texts used phrases he would never say, referenced events that never happened. They were clumsy forgeries designed to wound me at my most vulnerable. Instead of crushing me, they crystallized something. This wasn't just entitlement or selfishness. This was calculated cruelty. The next morning brought a knock at my door. I opened it warily to find Marcus Melissa's ex-husband standing there with a folder. I saw what's happening, he said without preamble, and I think you need this. Inside was documentation of everything Melissa had done during their marriage. Credit card statements showing her fraud, text messages revealing her threats, medical records disproving illnesses she'd claimed to have, and most damning journal entries where she meticulously plotted financial manipulations of both Marcus and her parents. I kept it all as insurance in case she ever came after me again, he explained. But you need it more than I do now. I stared at the evidence of who my daughter truly was. Not someone who made mistakes or had occasional lapses in judgment. Someone who systematically exploited those who loved her. "What do I do with this?" I whispered. "Whatever you need to protect yourself," he said simply. The Melissa I knew never backed down unless she had absolutely no choice. And she only reaches that point when faced with irrefutable evidence of her actions. As Marcus left, my phone rang. The local bank where David and I had kept our accounts for 30 years. The manager sounded concerned. "Mrs. Harmon, I'm calling because someone just attempted to access your accounts using your late husband's ID information and social security number. Company policy requires me to notify you immediately." I already knew who it was before she continued. "The woman claimed to be your daughter, acting on your behalf. When we requested additional verification, she became abusive with our staff." I closed my eyes, Marcus's folder heavy in my hands. "Thank you for calling. I'll be down shortly to review all my accounts." The time for half measures was over. My daughter had declared war. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to fight back. Armed with Marcus's folder and a newfound resolve, I spent the weekend creating a complete record of Melissa's deceptions. I cross-referenced bank statements with her supposed emergencies, documented the timeline of David's illness against her absences, and organized proof of every lie she'd told about me since his death. On Monday morning, I walked into my attorney's office with two decisions. I was changing my will, and I was ready to confront my daughter on my terms. "Are you sure about this?" Janet asked as I outlined my plan. "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied. We worked through the legal documents methodically. My revised will left symbolic amounts to Melissa $1 for every year David and I had supported her adult life, with the remainder divided between cancer research and a foundation for financial literacy. No loopholes, no contests. The little that remained would benefit others rather than enable further destruction. Then came the harder part. I composed a letter detailing everything I knew about her behavior, attached the evidence, and sent copies to everyone she'd contacted with lies about me. Family members, friends, even her current employer, where she'd apparently been embezzling funds, another detail Marcus had uncovered. "The truth doesn't need manipulation," Janet said as we finalized everything. "That's your advantage. She deals in lies. You deal in facts." I didn't have to wait long for the explosion. 3 days later, Melissa stormed into my house using the spare key I'd forgotten she had. This time, I was ready. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed, waving printed copies of my letter. "My boss called me in. Aunt Susan won't speak to me. My friends are blocking me." I remained seated at the kitchen table where I'd been enjoying my morning coffee. "I simply told the truth, Melissa. Something you might want to try sometime. You've ruined everything." Tears streamed down her face, practiced theatrical tears I now recognized as performance. "How could you do this to your own daughter?" "The same way you could skip your father's funeral for a weekend with a sugar daddy in Vegas," I replied calmly. "The same way you could forge texts from your dead father. The same way you could try to access my bank accounts illegally." Her face went blank with shock. She hadn't expected me to know everything. "You don't understand," she started, switching tactics, voice softening to the vulnerable daughter routine. "I have problems. I need help, not punishment." "You're right about one thing. You do need help. Professional help that I can't provide." I slid an envelope across the table. "This contains information about 3 treatment programs for people with your specific issues. I've paid deposits at each one. It's your choice which you attend, but you will attend one if you want any relationship with me moving forward." She laughed incredulously. "You can't be serious. I'm not going to rehab." "Not rehab. Therapy for compulsive lying and financial exploitation. And if you choose not to go, that's your right. But it's also my right to remove myself from your life permanently." "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, mask dropping entirely. "I'm all you have left." I met her gaze steadily. "No, Melissa, I have myself. And for the first time in 32 years, that feels like enough." 6 months have passed since that confrontation. Melissa didn't choose any of the treatment programs. Instead, she launched a vindictive campaign that backfired spectacularly when Marcus and others came forward with their own evidence. Her employer pressed charges for embezzlement. She took a plea deal, probation, and mandatory financial restitution. I haven't spoken to her since she left my kitchen that day. Sometimes I see social media updates from mutual connections. She's moved to another state, working retail, dating someone new, living a smaller life than the one she fabricated for so long. I sold our family home and bought a modest condo near the ocean, something David and I had always dreamed of for retirement. I volunteer at a financial literacy program for young adults, teaching lessons I wish someone had taught my daughter. I've made new friends, genuine ones who knew me during my hardest moments and stayed anyway. Sometimes people ask if I miss her, if I regret my decision to establish boundaries that she couldn't accept. The answer is complicated. I grieve the daughter I thought I had. I grieve the relationship we might have shared in a parallel universe where love didn't mean enabling destruction. But I don't regret finding my voice. I don't regret honoring David's memory by finally protecting what he worked his whole life to build. I don't regret choosing truth over comfortable lies. On David's birthday last month, I scattered some of his ashes in the ocean behind my new home. As I watched the waves claim them, I whispered, "I finally did it. I finally stood up for us both." For the first time since his death, I felt his presence not in grief, but in peace. Not in what I'd lost, but in what I'd finally found. Myself.